At least Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. The British Museum stole from the indigenous and gave to scores of bored, touring school children. Tēnā koutou. A tuatahi e tika ana ki te mihi ki tō tātou matu i te rangi, nāna nei ngā mea katoa. Tuarua e tika ana ki kia maumahara te wahine toa rangatira Makereti Papakura. Te wahine Māori tuatahi i tai mai ki Oxford, ka mihi mātou kia ia moana mahi whakamiharo kia oki i runga i te rangi Māria. A kia koutou Oxford, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Mr. President, mihi ana kia koe. I whakarangatira a mātou i tēnei wā. He honore nui ki te tautoko tēnei kaupapa rongo nui i tēnei wā. Tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā no tātou katoa. Kia ora, Mr. President, and to the House. It's a great honour to speak, being the first Māori in 200 years. It's taken a while, Lewis, but thank you very much. I started in our language, our indigenous language, not to just honour our language, but to honour the first Māori and first indigenous woman to attend Oxford. Her name was Makereti Papakura, and she opened the door for our people, and tonight I dedicate my speech to her legacy, the great Makereti Papakura. Now, I want to just give you a little background to where I'm coming from, because I think a couple of our competitors tonight were on the wines a bit too much upstairs, and one even forgot to talk about his moot. But I'm Māori too, of course, and I cut my teeth politically on the shop floor as a union official. My tribes, and I know people love tribes around here, are Ngāti Pro and Ngāti Maniapoto. But I've been brought up in the city as an urban Māori representative. I was honoured to serve as a minister for the fabulous Jacinda Ardern. And I'm sure she's a bit of a heroine around here. And also the former Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins. I've advocated and fought for human rights, Indigenous rights, equal rights all my life. And I'm about to do it again tonight. You might be slightly surprised then, Lord, that I'm on the opposite side of the moot to you tonight. But I think by the end of my speech, you too will support me and agree with me that British museums are without doubt, any doubt, very British. No, not quite now. We've waited 200 years for this opportunity. But thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to take the opportunity to finish my speech. Now, as I speak to you, I sense the presence of my ancestors who are trapped in your museum prison. Therefore, I support the former Prime Minister, National Party Prime Minister, Jenny Shipley, who said in the 2021 debate, Oxford debate, she asserted that the British Empire is a national disgrace. She said, and I quote, that the relics for Māori are human. They are people. They are their whānau and family. And they live in the basements of museums, neglected and listed as if they were an item of irrelevance. And that the right thing to do would be to return them. She was 100% right. As you enter the British Museum, and I was there the other day, you are greeted by a dome of architectural conceit designed by a knighted smirk as the empire hides its theft deep in the bowels of its institution. Now I stand before the brilliance and magnificent history of these most revered Oxford debates to tell the House that British museums are very, very British, because it's very, very, very British to take from Indigenous people and never hand it back. to paraphrase our great former Prime Minister, David Long, his famous quip during the nuclear weapons Oxford debate 39 years ago, "I can smell the colonialism on your breath from here." The British Museum is without question, a bastion and symbol of imperial privilege and cultural condescension. And what I ask, ladies and gentlemen, of this great debating chamber is what is more British than imperial privilege and cultural condescension? That's very British. These are difficult times. I was listening to you, poor old Prime Minister Sunak knows that very well. And dominant white cultures, as you know, Ed, in general, they're constantly criticised by activists online for cultural appropriation. I get it. And I say it's difficult because that's what British and dominant white cultures do, don't they? Take other people's culture and proclaim it as their own. The British, not you lot here, of course, the British steal Indigenous culture because they care. I get it, I think. The entire cultural history of the British is stealing good ideas and culture from everyone they encountered. Isaac Newton, for instance, in terms of gravity, that was based on a Muslim text 556 years before the apple fell on him. The British stole from the Greeks, Indigenous people and Muslim scientists, and when they don't like something, well, they just pack it off to Rwanda. Who else has the audacity to arrive on distant shores, hop off their boats and declare they own everything? They own everything. And now they do that in the name of God, King and country. Well, we know who does that. The British. That's who. The mindset that Britain must hold on to 2,000-year-old relics because the silly people they stole these treasures from won't be able to look after them properly. Well, that's so British. It is, they may as well be having a cup of tea, draped in the Union Jack, doing the Monty Python Ministry of Silly Walks skit routine. Where on earth do you get off telling us we can't have our treasures back? That's very British. Now, last year it was revealed the British Museum lost 2,000 items, right? 2,000 items from its priceless collection and couldn't remember where they had misplaced them. Imagine having so many treasures plundered from around the planet that you lose 2,000 of them and you can't find the paperwork. That's very British again. The British Museum, just people might not know, holds the largest Māori collections outside New Zealand, including items of major artistic and cultural significance. Māori view these artefacts, as Jenny Shipley said, as our ancestors. The British Museum has collected our ancestors together as curiosities, divorced from the culture that produced them, a little bit like chicken tikka masala is to the British. That's very British. And I was listening about Lord Elgin. Lord Elgin insisted he had permission to remove the Elgin marbles from the Ottoman Empire. But conveniently, the original letter giving him permission has been lost, and the wording of what remains is disputed. That's very British. And in 2022, the Greek culture minister, he accused Lord Elgin of blatant serial theft. Imagine that, a Greek accusing a Brit of stealing. Incredible, really. Wait until they hear what Locke and Hobbes stole from Plato and Socrates. At least Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. The British Museum stole from the indigenous and gave to scores of bored, touring school children. That's very British. That's very British. To defend themselves, of course, and I heard this tonight, from accusations of global theft, the British Museum, they've done the most British of things. They claim a voice now that speaks for the entire species, right? They now claim to not just be the British Museum, they are in fact the World Museum. How convenient. That's Donald Trump level narcissism. Only the British could have the presumptuousness to speak on behalf of the entire civilization, to justify retaining ownership of everyone else's plundered cultural treasures. Rule Britannia, Britannia misbehaves, Britain never, never will pay for robbing graves. Now, Now, at this stage, I need to make a confession to all of you. I've got English ancestry too, and on both my mother and father's side. Now, I wanted to make that confession, make a lot of people feel comfortable tonight. You might be thinking I'm some sort of political radical. My great-grandfather, Fred Jackson, came from Leicester, and he came to New Zealand with the first British Lions team in 1908, hooked up with one of the nannies, didn't go back, but... I'm declaring this because I want to be clear that while I'm proudly Indigenous, I also have the same DNA as so many people here. We could be related, Ed. You never know. So I think the point is, and I need you to know this before you go out there and vote, is I'm the most qualified person here. You have to think about that. Completely unbiased and uniquely qualified to comment on this issue, given the history that the English have in terms of colonising Indigenous people. I'm your prodigal son returning Britain, even if you didn't know I existed. For us, though, the most important treasure that is sitting in foreign museums, and I want to get serious here, are moko mokai. They are the preserved heads of Māori, adorned with moko. That's like tattoos over your head, if you don't know what I'm talking about. From Cook's first visit, Europeans were fascinated by the heads, which had been traditionally preserved to remembered honoured ancestors. But such was the level of European demand to take mokai back home as curios, and such was the need for iwi to get muskets for the musket wars. An ugly, filthy trade took place. The great thing was English and Māori leaders decided to stop that trade, which was brilliant. But for 200 years, the remains of our ancestors have laid in distant lands, in the archives of museum and other collections. Many have been returned, but the British Museum still holds 7 moko mokai. Many of our people believe these mokai cry out to us. I was there the other day. They talk to us. They want to go home. I implore you on behalf of my people to honour the partnership agreement between Māori and the British Crown. That is the Treaty of Waitangi, and let our ancestors come home. What is also very British is the burning desire by each passing generation to do better than their previous generation attempts. I want to give the British some compliments here. The British, I do. The British traditions of debate, democracy, will of the people, and the entrenchment of human rights that respect the dignity of the individual makes the British people open to progress. The visions of their Churchills and Queen Elizabeths and their heroes with the language of Shakespeare. They are a people willing to engage with reason and passion in equal measure, and some would say they have been worthy guardians of our treasures. I'm probably not one of those people, but some would say that. I thank this historic space and powerful debating chamber for the privilege of allowing a working class son from the bottom of the planet to stand amongst you and remind you all how awful you have been to Indigenous people. So it's really important that we get the right vote tonight, people. So as you pass through those doors tonight to vote, I implore you to acknowledge who you are as Britons, but even more importantly, who you want to be as Britons. Vote against this motion and accept British museums are very British, and we hope your British tradition of justice brings my ancestors home. Thank you, everybody. Kia ora tātou.